Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Rom, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, follow me on Instagram at Rising Woman Leaders and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello, beautiful sisters. I have an exciting announcement for you. This coming Thursday, December 6th, on the new moon in Sagittarius, I'll be leading a new webinar called 2019 Fulfilled. I'll be sharing some of my most recent epiphanies and insights from the last year, as well as guidance on designing 2019 to be your best year yet. I'll be sharing on the topics and questions of what creates true, lasting joy. How do you align with your highest contribution and service? What new vision are you calling in? What really makes people feel happy and fulfilled? And how do we finally manifest the desires that live at the bottom of our heart? I'll be guiding you through my step-by-step process to align with your highest intentions for this new year and how to actually take tangible steps towards them. There will be an encouraging group of women joining us for the live webinar. And even if you can't make it live, I'll send out the recording so that you can have all the information. So I hope to see you there. Simply go to my website, meredithrom.com/fulfilled to sign up. I'm here today with Renee Linnell, who graduated magna cum laude with a double degree, traveled to nearly 50 countries before she turned 35, was a surf bikini model and a professional Argentine tango dancer, started 5 different companies, and got an MBA from New York University. She also spent close to 7 years in a Buddhist cult and ended up severely brainwashed. In her new memoir, The Burn Zone, Renee discusses her journey into deranged and damaged and her awakening on the other side. Her key message for us is our difference is our destiny, and that when we stop trying to hide the parts of us that make us different, we will truly soar. Yay, so happy to have you here, Renee.
Thank you, Meredith. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah. And so Renee is also, I've gotten to know her as a past participant in the program I lead, the Sovereign Circle. Such an honor to have gotten to know her in that space. And we actually found each other when we were both going through our book publishing journeys. We have the same publisher based out of Berkeley, and that's how we first connected.
I love that. I love how I found you by your beautiful book cover.
Thank you. And so my book came out a year before yours, and I went through that whole journey and was kind of just getting to know you over that year of you coming into choosing the title and the cover and the book. And now the book is out. It just came out, I believe it was October 9th.
Yes.
And you went on this month-long book tour, and it was so cool to see TV, radio interviews, and all the different outlets that you were doing, the events and the bookstores. And I just want to start by hearing, how was that experience? What was it like for you, just being kind of in that public eye and sharing so much of yourself? And what did you learn through the experience?
Well, it was actually the hardest thing I've ever done. And that means harder than getting stranded at 22,000 feet in the Himalayas and having to find my way down by myself by following donkey poop. And harder than writing a book, and harder than commuting every other weekend to New York to get my MBA from NYU. and harder than coming back from being totally brainwashed. And the reason it was so hard is because I am such an introvert. And I think, like most authors, we think that we get to hide in our homes and write. And I think a lot of us don't realize that we actually have to go out and sell the books. So I was terrified of public speaking. And I was doing a lot of live television, live radio, and then book signings. And so it was a crucible of sorts, and I had a very packed schedule. And what I figured out halfway through, that if I wasn't just completely and totally authentically me, I wasn't going to make it through. And so it is interesting how my whole book is about being authentic, and how I thought that I had learned to do that, and then to see how in such a new and terrifying situation, I was trying to be who I thought TV needed me to be or radio needed me to be. So it was beautiful. By the end, I was authentically me, and the words flew through me easier, and I enjoyed it much more, and I got better results.
I can imagine, just by the end of it, doing it that much and being asked these questions and kind of tuning into that new comfort zone, that it got easier over time. I did watch one of the TV interviews, and I thought, wow, she's rocking it.
Thank you. But what I also learned is, when we have a really profound message to share, that when I was sharing it with the wrong audience, it made me feel like a freak and a weirdo. And when I was sharing it with the right audience, it made me realize how much wisdom I had truly gained. And the quote, and I don't mean this to sound egotistical, but the quote from the Bible where Jesus says he never threw pearls before swine came to mind, that some people are really ready for a deep, profound message, and some people aren't. And so those of us that tend to be mystics and psychics and extra sensitive, hypersensitive beings that have been through a lot, we feel like we're wrong or we're broken when we're talking to the wrong people. And when we're talking to the right people, we realize just how wise and strong we are.
That's a real, piece of wisdom to take away from all of this. It makes such a difference to have an audience that is aligned and lifting you up and seeing you in the eyes of just like, wow, this woman has something wonderful to share with me, as opposed to the people who might be, who's this freak? What's this story?
Right. And I learned that it was okay, because I got labeled a cult survivor. And I'm thinking my whole story is about your difference is your destiny, and about being true to yourselves, and that what happens to you actually happens for you. And I thought, it's so not just about being in a cult. But I realized that that's what was interesting to them. And so I could play that part for 10 minutes on TV, and it wasn't going to hurt me.
Yeah, true. So tell us about your story and this whole piece of joining a cult. And I know that it never would seem that way from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about just growing up, and then this decision of joining this spiritual group, and everything that kind of became this book.
Okay. It is funny, because one of the TV interviews I did, the first thing he asked me is, so what made you join a cult? And I said, nobody decides to join a cult. It's not like, that sounds like an interesting life experience. And it's the same as any toxic relationship, which is, if somebody hits you or abuses you on the first date, you don't go on a second date, but they start with romance, and they start with building you up and making you feel loved. And so that's what this group did for me. I lost most of my family when I was young, and my father died when I was 15, and I was left with an abusive, alcoholic mother. And I was always psychic and small and extra sensitive and the weird kid. And so I was desperate to find a place where I fit in. And I tried to be like everyone else, and I hid my difference as well. But I felt like nobody understood me. And I ended up creating this beautiful life for myself as a model and professional dancer, traveling the world and getting paid well. But I still felt so empty and soul sick and sad inside. And nobody was talking about having everything and still feeling empty. And so I thought I was the only one. And when I was 33, I walked into a meditation seminar and found peace. And I found a tribe of similar beings. And I finally felt like I belonged. And so I stayed.
Yeah, it's true that there aren't a lot of people talking about that. Like when we have everything from the outside that others may be wanting or attaining to, but that feeling of emptiness, that it just, yeah, it can eat you up. And when you found this sense of peace, it just, your heart opened. It sounds like you started to fall in love with this teacher, right?
Yes, with the teacher and with the feeling of exquisite peace that I felt when I meditated in front of her. And then she also went on to say that in the East, people have these beautiful spiritual practices, but they live in poverty. And in the West, people have these wonderful careers and make a lot of money, but they're soul sick. And so what she was going to teach us to do was to sharpen our minds through meditation, which was the hardest thing that was to do. And then to use our career as our offering to the divine and use every moment at work as our spiritual practice. And then we would make more money. We would get promoted, make more money, and create a life in which we could meditate better and give back to the world through philanthropy. And so that sounded perfect for me.
And you did start to feel a lot of success, and like this was working for you for quite a while as part of this group, right?
I did. And I also, because I had been raised Catholic, I had never experienced, and I had studied all different religions when I was searching, and I never found anything that said I could love God or source and be spiritual, but still live in the world and make a lot of money and have a lot of fun and enjoy the pleasures of the senses and actually have that be my spiritual path. And because it was Tantric Buddhist mysticism, she said what made it Tantra was that we live in the world, we don't hide from anything, and we make every day, every moment, everything that comes at us our spiritual path. So I really loved that.
Yes. And what were some of the red flags and things that when things started to shift or change or to feel like the brainwashing, what were some of the things that happened?
Red flags were definitely the deification of the leader. So there was this woman, Lakshmi, that I named her Lakshmi to protect everyone's identity. And there was the man, Vishnu. And they would show up and we would all stand and then they would teach and then they would leave. And we never really got to see them as human. We just saw them on stage in the beginning. And then they started really overloading our schedule with tasks. Like we had to meditate 2 hours a day and we had to get these great careers and study computer programming and get black belts in karate. And so we were all so consumed with the tasks that there wasn't time for friends and family and activities that we love. And so I started noticing that I wasn't as happy when I wasn't surfing or dancing. And then the male teacher told me I couldn't surf or dance because I would get too much attention from men and that they would harm me energetically, which I realize now is a stripping away of my foundation, taking away the things that empowered me. And then as I got closer and closer to them, I started running the company. I saw that they actually didn't practice anything of what they preached. And while I had burned all of my possessions to learn detachment, they still lived with all of theirs. So yeah, a lot of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm. And yet, even after you started to notice those things, there was this almost like an addiction or this sense of I can't go. Like, how was that period, and what was the thing that finally made you be like, okay, I need to stop. I need to get out of here?
The reason it was hard to leave was because of self-doubt. And that is another thing I learned from this experience, is that those of us that are codependent, or that have been, especially if we've been raised by parents that are addicts or a parent that's an addict, we learn this intermittent reinforcement, which is they love us and then they don't, and then they love us and then they push us away. And so we're drawn to narcissists who love us and push us away. And that's the pattern of love that we're used to. And then we have self-doubt. So when they start to tell us that we're not good enough in some way, we believe it. And when the relationship doesn't feel like it's working, we think it's our fault. And so in this situation, she was helping me, quote, sand down my ego to become more enlightened by pointing out everything that was wrong with me. And every time I felt like, well, I don't really like the way this feels, or I should leave, I thought my ego was so big that I was never going to become enlightened and I was going to fail. And she also introduced dark forces that would mess with our minds and cause us to want to leave the path to enlightenment. And so when I wanted to leave, I thought, oh, the dark forces are making me want to leave. And so it really is training us away from our own intuition. And again, I think in toxic relationships, people do that too. When you have the sense that somebody's cheating on you and they say, no, you're wrong, you're making it up, you're crazy. And our intuition is just so strong, but certain people thrive on making us not listen to it. So that's what was going on. And finally, and I talk about it in the book, I had a near-death experience that kind of shattered me and woke me up, along with my whole entire life being broken into pieces, that made me start to see clearly.
Yes. And if I remember, it was snowboarding. Was that right? The moment?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Tell us what happened there.
My life at this point was completely broken. I had burned everything I owned and distanced myself from friends and family and gone into an incredibly failed business relationship where I was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I was smeared all over the New York tabloids as the jaded lover who left her business partner. And I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then I was snowboarding for the first time in 5 years, and I hit a rock that was buried that I didn't see. It was buried under the snow. And I went flying in the air, and I landed on my head, and I tucked my neck and rolled out of it. And I shouldn't have. I should have broken my neck. And the next morning and by the time I got home off the mountain or to where I was staying, I realized I didn't want to be in New York any longer. I didn't want to be going to school any longer. I didn't want to be dating the person I was dating, that I was living somebody else's life. And I just wanted to move to the mountains and heal and write. And the next morning I happened to have a call with a woman that reads the Akashic Records. And I had never had a call with someone like that before. And I was allowed to ask her 5 questions. And I started with, what happened to me yesterday? And she didn't know about the accident, but she said, Renee, ski trips are so interesting. Accidents happen all the time. And your soul had scheduled an opt-out. And you could have left and nobody would have asked questions. It would have just been a skiing accident. But you made a decision to stay. And when you decided to stay, you decided to get on your real path. And so then my next question was, what was the deal with my spiritual teachers? Why were they so terrible to me? And she said, they're not good people. And so she really helped me see the truth.
Wow. Yeah. And so then you did go back to Colorado and began this healing, grief, and all of that. Tell us about that time and of healing, and like what got you through, what brought you back to your sanity, what helped you in that healing journey.
Well, the first thing I did when I got off the phone with her was I called a therapist and I realized I needed some serious professional help. And then I realized that I did need to move out of the city and go someplace really safe and quiet. And I thought I was going to move to Colorado, write 3 books, become a best-selling author, and be healed within a year. And instead I got to Colorado and I completely broke apart, and I couldn't get off the couch for months, and I couldn't feed myself anything besides gooey, fattening food, and I couldn't exercise. I could barely brush my teeth or even go outside of my house. for months. And fortunately, I had a great therapist. And at one point, I was saying, I know that everything that happened to me happened for me, and I know that this is all part of the divine plan. And she said, Renee, you have to stop trying to be so saintly about this. And you have to express the emotion that's in you, the rage and that betrayal and the hurt. And she encouraged me to start journaling and screaming into pillows and punching bags. And she said, children are masters at moving emotion through them. In 90 seconds, they have a temper tantrum and it's over. And adults don't know how to do that any longer. And so she really encouraged me to get the anger out. And that helped get a lot of my energy back, because I went from this victim mode, totally depressed, couldn't function, to enraged and angry, which has a lot more energy to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think feeling our pain and our rage and our anger and letting it move through us is the pathway to actually be able to forgive.
Yes. And then one time when I could not let go of the anger, she finally said, Renee, the reason you can't let go is because it's not anger at all of those people that hurt you. It's anger at yourself. And she helped me see that I was the one I had to forgive. And so then I started in with the self-love and these tiny acts of nurturing. Like if I was a 3-year-old, what would I give myself? And I would say, oh, I'm going to spend the whole day just watching movies under a blanket, and I'm going to treat myself to a cup of tea. And so these tiny little acts that brought me joy were what brought me out of the darkness.
That's so beautiful and so important. And I think that's something I work a lot with clients on, is just like if you're your own mother and just like treating yourself so sweetly. Because I think it's true. A lot of us can go into these patterns of self-punishment, and it's subconscious. We don't even realize we're doing it.
No, we don't realize we're doing it. And then what happens is then we're desperate to find somebody out there that will do it for us. You know, if we're women, we say, well, I just want a man to take me to dinner, or to buy me flowers, or to hug me and hold me, or make me a bubble bath. And then we're so upset that the man doesn't come along, or that he doesn't do that. And I realized we need to do that for ourselves. It's so easy to make excuses. I don't have time. I don't have the money. I can't afford to do this or that. And when we really start doing that for ourselves, lighting the candles and wearing the lingerie and eating the chocolate and buying ourselves the little gifts and treating ourselves to the nicer hotel room so we get better rest, or whatever it is, then we're just so happy in the moment with ourselves that it doesn't matter who out there is doing or not doing for us.
Yeah, it's so amazing. You've come so far.
I know. And it is interesting because people say, oh, love myself. What does that mean? And I realize it really does mean stop making excuses for not giving ourselves the things that we want in this life. Our life is so short. So, yeah, spoiling ourselves.
Yeah, so good. So with the book coming out now, you've shared all of these very personal stories. And I know something we've talked about in the past is like letting your skeletons out of the closet. And on one hand, that's really freeing. And on the other hand, it's super vulnerable. So I just wonder if you could share that journey of like people reading your writing, having this out there in the world, and being in that place of vulnerability and kind of just like, this is who I am. And how has that been for you?
That's such a good question, because I go through phases where I don't even think about it and it feels like my divine path and I don't question it. And then I go through phases of what the heck am I doing? The whole entire world is reading about my mind demons and my dirty laundry and all my bad decisions and the deepest truths of my heart. And what I realized through this process is back to those people that really can learn from our message and our experience. When I'm around them, I feel wise. And when I'm around those that really can't, I feel like the freak show. And I started to realize that when we incarnate, we're the only version of us there is. We're these gooey balls of love and we're perfect. And out of 8 billion people, to be the only version of us there is a spectacular thing if you think about it. Mm-hmm. And then we spend childhood and adolescence and young adulthood trying to fit in and blend in and hide what makes us different. And then we're desperate to find somebody who sees us as unique. And I realized when we pretend to be something we're not, we attract to us people that don't really get us. And then that's why we feel so alone in the world. But when we're willing to really, really, really be ourselves and be authentic and tell our stories and own our wounds, then those that are freaked out by us move away. But then it leaves space for those that truly love us and cherish us and appreciate us and celebrate what makes us weird and different. They come closer. And so then life becomes so much more fun.
Yeah. And we don't have to try so hard.
No. So the beautiful thing is I'm single. And so now I feel like I can just hand that book to anyone who's interested and go, you know what, read this and then decide if you want to call me. And if you don't, it's fine. But I know if somebody does, that he really is actually interested in me, the true essence of me with all the broken bits.
Yeah. I think it's such an energy drain, the hiding and the just like hiding parts of ourselves or our past. It can take up so much energy. So
it really does. Yeah.
If there's a woman out there listening who's feeling shame around her past, or something that she's done or that's happened and is like in that place of just like, I don't want anyone to know about this, what advice would you have for her?
Oh my gosh, that's going to make me cry. Because my first advice is to look at your little child self and tell her it's okay that she feels shame and afraid, and to just hold her and allow her to feel that feeling. And then to start telling your child self that she is beautiful and she's perfect and that some part of her soul signed up for that experience. And then to start saying, so if you're beautiful and you're perfect and you signed up for that experience, the way you would talk to a little 4-year-old, what do you think you learned from it? And what do you think you gained from it? And what do you think you could share about it that might help others who are feeling sad and shameful about it? And you watch that little 4-year-old girl start to perk up like, oh my gosh, I can be a teacher. And oh my gosh, I learned that to help others. And oh my gosh, on some level, I actually signed up to do that or to experience that. And then you feel the love start to come into those really dark places. And then I would say you slowly write about it over and over and over. And then you start to get the courage to talk about it to people you trust. And as you talk about it, the message is kind of broad and messy and you're not quite sure really where you're going with it. And then the more you talk about it and the more you share it, the more the message and the wisdom becomes clear and you start to see where you can really help.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. Thank you. And I imagine that writing the book was this healing journey of itself, and also maybe hard going back into some of those places. What was your experience with writing the book and coming to that place? Like, how was it on your healing journey with that?
It definitely was not easy in the beginning. It was like I like to tell people when they have something inside that wants to come out through writing, you vomit it all onto the page over and over and over. And so many of the same stories I wrote over and over, and there was so much pain and so much hatred and so much anger. And I just kept writing and writing until it all came out. And then I found a really good editor. And as she walked me through the editing process, she was wonderful because she would say, you know, on this part, I don't think you're really telling me everything you were feeling. And I know it might be painful, but I need you to try to get in there and explain more. And I did. And as I did it, it was a tremendous healing. And so by the time the book was actually done, I felt like instead of writing the book from a place of anger, I was writing it from a place of love. which I think translates to the reader, because now the reader can read through it without being bogged down by pain and anger, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely felt that reading it. There was just a real sense of like being on your team and like what happens next, and kind of guiding you through thinking of your own life and epiphanies of, wow, I've been hiding this thing for all this time, and here's Renee having so much courage, just sharing it. What would it be like for me to have that liberation? Yeah, those are.
I love that. Thank you. That's what I was really hoping my reader would take away from the book.
Definitely. Yeah. Wow. So what is in store for you now? You've done this tour, you've written this book, it's out in the world. Well, for anyone that wants to buy it or look at it, I'll just share. It's called The Burn Zone. Do you want to just share just like what's next for you, and also where people can find and buy the book?
Sure. You can find and buy the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any local bookstore. If they don't have it, they'll definitely order it for you. And you can read more about me and my story on reneelinnell.com, which is ReneeLinnell. And I didn't realize, I hoped it would, but I didn't realize this book would gain so much traction so quickly. So next for me is Audible. They offered a publishing deal. And hopefully it'll be my voice reading the book. I think I'll be doing that in the next month. And then taking a break for the holidays, and then book tour number 2 up and down the East Coast, January, February, and March. And then we'll see what happens from there.
Wow. So amazing.
Thanks. It's really fun. It's exhausting, but fun. But I learned I'll do book tour number 2 differently, with much more self-nurturing in it.
So will it be a similar amount of events, but spacing it out more?
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yes, time for exercise and bubble baths and good sleep and good food.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to put together in just a few weeks, what you just did. Yeah. So I hope you have a lot of nurturing rest time this winter.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy just for the success that you're seeing and all of this hard work and time and investment that you've put into this project, to see it just out there in the world and helping people. It's such an inspiration.
Thank you so much, Meredith.
Yeah. Do you have any closing words for our audience, or anything that's like little takeaways for people to leave people with?
I do. I know that your audience is mostly women, so this applies to women and men, but I'm going to address it to women, which is, we're bombarded with messaging that tells us we're not okay the way we are, and it's up to us to switch that paradigm. Whether it's the color of our skin or the size and shape of our body or our sexual preferences, or the things we love that other people don't love, or the things we hate that other people don't hate. I think it's really time that we decide we're beautiful, and we decide that we're worthy, and we start to treat ourselves with the love that we want from somebody else. Because when we do that, we get filled up with this beautiful divine light from within, and it makes us glow, and it makes us more beautiful. And the planet needs more light, and that is the way, as women, we shine light in this world.
Yes. So I'll invite all of our listeners to just take a moment to breathe that in.
And I would love for them to look, I would love for you all of us, to look in the mirror every day, look at ourselves in our own eyes and say, I love you, honey. You are so beautiful.
Feeling that, this invitation, this willingness to shine our light and to be in the sharing of all of ourselves. Nothing to hide, nothing to push away, but rather just allowing all of our differences, all of our weirdness, all of our past to just be present here in the surface. Thank you so much, Renee, for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today. I hope everyone gets a copy of the book, The Burn Zone. I bring my hands to my heart and just with so much gratitude bow to all of you listening and to you, Renee. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Namaste.
Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.